Jonathan Schrager here for Stretty News TV. I'm joined today with the Old Trafford, a familiar backdrop here, Danny, in hotel football. And I'm joined today by Manchester United alumnus, 94 to 2000, Danny Higginbotham. First of all, Danny, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you.
And which is the game, before I just talk a little bit about the managers that you've played under, which is the game subsequent to United, when you've gone off to the various clubs and played various games against United, that sticks out in your memory? Was the one? And also, aside from that, was it difficult for you? I imagine it wasn't, because of your professionalism and your attitude. Was it difficult for you to play against your beloved United?
No, not at all. Because of the time had come to, and I still supported the club. Yeah. But no, not in the slightest. I think there's probably a couple that stand out. I remember actually my first time back at Old Trafford. Yeah. It was the second last game of the season. Yeah. At Derby, and I think we needed 3 points from the last game.
I've got a feeling I know the game you're about to mention here.
So we needed 3 points from the last game, and we were playing Manchester United here.
Wasn't Paulo one shot, was it?
No, that may have been the year before.
Was that the year before
right.
That. Right.
And we were playing Manchester United here, and we were playing Ipswich at home, who'd had an unbelievable season. I think they qualified for what was the UEFA Cup at the time. Yeah. And we stayed at Mottram Hall, but preparation was for 2 nights. I'll never forget, on the Saturday morning, we'd been playing 3-5-2 for a while, and the Saturday morning we're all sat down having breakfast, and you've got these huge windows at Mottram Hall, and Jim Smith, unbelievable character, lovely character, he just stood up, and in his voice he's gone, that's it, and everyone's just like, what are you on about? Grabs the physios, grabs Neil Sillitt, John McEwen, Steve Round, takes him over to a window, you lot, come over here. So he goes over with me, he said, just look out that window. And I kid you not, and this is something that I swear, there was 10 ducks, or geese, whatever you want to call them, in the garden. Yeah. And they were walking in a formation. He said, and another, he goes, it's a sign. And everyone just didn't know whether to laugh or not. They were walking in a formation. It was a 3, a 4, and a 3. Right. So he said, we're going to Old Trafford today, and we're going to play a 3-4-3. So we're going to Old Trafford, we're going to play 3-4-3.
Based on the Ducks.
Based on the Ducks. But not just that, a midfield partnership of probably two of the technically most gifted players I'd played with, George Kincladge and Stefano Aranio. Yeah. But couldn't tackle a bin bag between them. So we're walking in, and we've got in there, and I'm like, right, okay, so we're doing this, and the game starts off all right. We're winning 1-0 at half-time, and as we're walking in at half-time, all the other results come over the thing, so we think to myself, unbelievable, winning 1-0. If we can hold on even for a draw, we're halfway there to what we need. But as we're walking in, we hear Coventry are in a relegation battle with us. Aston Villa 0, Coventry 2. Right. So although we're delighted walking in, our heads have just gone down because we just heard this, and we're like, flipping heck, if they win, and we end up drawing, end up getting beat, we're as good as down. So we walked into the dressing room, the manager's like, just keep going, keep doing things the way you are doing. And the second half was an absolute onslaught. How we didn't concede. At the time, I don't know whether it still is, it was the most blocked shots in the Premier League history. Right. But somehow we ended up winning the game. And as we come off the pitch, get into the dressing room, there's a knock on the door. And the huge like your wheelie bins type things. Knock on the door, wheelie bin. Jim's got his cigar. I mean, we're all eating pizza. There's a knock on the door, and a big wheelie bin gets pushed through with loads of beer in it. So I tell you what, it's really good of him, that. And I know that Sir Alex Ferguson and Jim Smith are good friends, I think that, but there's professionalism on the pitch. Yeah. So sat down, and I'm having a beer and just reminiscing on the game and things like that. And then all of a sudden, it just hits me. I think to myself, hell, we've beaten United at Old Trafford to stay up. Yeah. United have won the league, so they're happy. Yeah. And to top it all off, we've relegated Man City. Because us beating Manchester United at Manchester United, I think relegated Manchester City as good as. Right. And it was just such a bizarre turn of events. Yeah. And we were going the next day for a training camp in Jersey, and everything had been set up for us. It was going to be proper week's training to lead up to the Ipswich game, because it was going to be a deciding game for the Premier League. Yeah. And we turned up to get on the bus, Steve Brown stood up at the front, speaking on the microphone. Right, lads, Jim Smith, the gaffer, he's not coming. He's having a week to himself.
Yeah.
And there's a load of beer underneath. Go and get it. So we're all driving we're going to the airport to get on this plane, and we got to Jersey. And I kid you not, we played Ipswich the following Sunday, and I would say that 85% of us were still drunk. It went from one extreme of a trip to another. It was like a celebration because you know what we'd done. The odds were against us, but we'd done it, and
yeah,
you know it was fantastic to go there. So that was one of them. And then I think Louis Saha's first game for United was against Southampton.
Yeah,
and the pitch was awful here. I think we took a 2-0 lead, and the second half we got it back to 2-2. And I remember myself, and I haven't mentioned it a lot, so I nearly scored an overhead. Yeah. Hit the crossbar twice and come down, so I'll never forget that moment. But you know, United ended up winning 3-2, and we were devastated then because Rude, he'd scored the winner, and he'd done his famous one, you know, start offside, coming back onside, and then scored a goal. So we were disappointed because we really thought that at 2-2 we were having the better of the game.
Yeah.
And we really fancied our chances. So they're probably the two that stand out for me. But any time I come to play it, it was great. And I think was it my last appearance here? No, I don't think it was. But one of my later appearances there, I actually scored at the Stretford end for United. And that was just before I went on holiday, and afterwards I got loads of stick. But you always said you'd love to score at the Stretford end for United, and you have done. So it wasn't meant to be that way. But yeah, that was, I think that was about 2009 maybe, last game of the season, when Chelsea battered Wigan and United just needed to get as many goals as they could. So we were just cannon fodder that day. We just wanted the season to come to an end. I think it was our 2010 it will have been. I think it was our second season in the Premier League. We'd had a great season, and you know, but yeah, so that was probably the other memory.
And you obviously you've cited him on various occasions during this interview, and he's widely regarded as the greatest manager of all time, Sir Alex. You've already alluded to a few memories you have of him, but what's your abiding memory of Sir Alex? Was it the time that he came out to Belgium?
I think that has to be one of them.
Yeah,
I think that has to be one of them, because he didn't need to do that. You know, they just won the treble, and he was plotting how do you beat that?
Yeah,
which is very difficult, and he took time out of his busy schedule to come over with us. Every time I've seen him since as well, every time we played a game against him, he's always stopped, shook my hand, which I thought was very good. He didn't need to do anything like that. And was it 2005, 2004, 2005 season, I think. United they didn't win the league.
Yeah.
And I was at Southampton, and we played United last game of the season, and they had the FA Cup coming up.
Yeah.
And they were getting a bit of stick because they hadn't won the league and what have you, so we had to play his strongest team, and we went ahead 1-0, and I think we ended up getting beat either 2-1 or 3-1 at Southampton, and we ended up getting relegated.
Yeah.
And it's it's something I've been relegated twice. It's a horrible feeling. You know, you feel as though, not just for the players, but you know there's going to be people behind the scenes that don't deserve it, but they're going to lose the job, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
I never forget, I think I was the last one into the dressing room, and I'm walking down the tunnel, and he stood outside our dressing room, and he just said, just shook my hand and just said, listen, Danny, he said, I'm really sorry. He said, but I had to play that team. Yeah. He said, you know, you've seen the stick that we've been getting, and you know, I had to justify things. He said, but you know, I'm really sorry about it. And for me, you didn't have to do that either.
No.
You didn't have to justify anything to me. But I just think that for me is very similar to what I'm talking about Manchester United, is in terms of, if you leave this football club and you're considered a decent person, you will be remembered. I'm not going to be remembered at this football club for being a United legend. You know, I played 6-7 games, but the whole fact of, like, every time you come back, there's people here that were here when I was here, and even players, and they stop. Sir Alex Ferguson, like I said, a prime example. They don't have to do things like that, but they remember and they chat with you because they remember your time at the football club as a young lad, being a decent lad, and then going on to being able to build a career after leaving Manchester United. Yeah,
absolutely. And I wanted to ask as well, when you played under some real strong characters, managers, like you mentioned before, Jim Smith, Harry Redknapp, Roy Keane,
Gordon Strachan as well,
Gordon Strachan. It's human nature to compare and contrast.
Yeah.
So when you leave Manchester United under Sir Alex and you play under these other real strong characters, what were the kind of similarities and differences that you recognised amongst them?
I probably wouldn't, and people have asked me this question before in terms of, who was the best manager I ever had.
Yeah.
I leave Sir Alex Ferguson out of it because, disrespectful to myself, but he was, played 6 or 7 games.
Yeah.
So he wasn't my manager, so to speak. A lot of the times, my main managers at Manchester United were managers of the reserves probably at the time, people like Jim Ryan and people like that. Yes, I used to train with the first team, but a lot of the time he'd have the assistant manager doing the coaching, and Sir Alex Ferguson would be watching up above and looking at everything. But as in terms of me as a player, I only really had 6 or 7 occasions where I started a game.
Yeah.
Where he was my manager, if that makes sense. There was no real comparison. I think I'd be a liar. I think I'd be talking rubbish if I sat here and said, well, the way that they compared Sir Alex Ferguson is different, because all the other managers that you mentioned afterwards, they were actually my manager.
Yeah.
I'd been bought at that football club. I was a first team player at that football club. But I've had so many different characters, but the one thing I think I've been very fortunate with is to have characters who, the main 3 that stand out to me, is in terms of the character and the desire that they had, were Tony Pulis. Mm-hmm. He was the best man. He did the most for me in my career. Enjoyed my best time at Stoke. Yeah. Roy Keane, he was just the same as a manager as he was as a player. Gordon Strachan. I think they were probably, 3 that stood out for me, because of the simple fact of what they wanted from their players, from a manager. They left no stone unturned. Jim Smith was the same, Harry Redknapp, but they were different. Harry Redknapp, you speak to anybody, they've got nothing but good things to say about him as a manager. He was great. I think probably if you asked him personally himself, he'd probably say that it wasn't his greatest time at Southampton. Mm-hmm. But he was good. I learned different things off him. But Gordon Strachan, like I say, did loads for my career. Tony Pulis, and even though I only spent a year with Roy Keane, I always thought that I was driven. I always believed that I was driven. But then, when I used to see Roy Keane as a player, I knew he was driven. But then when a manager is even more driven, and I think one of the things I would say as well when people talk about, I have no reason, I have no explanation or understanding of why, but people look at his time at Sunderland, and sometimes it's looked at as unsuccessful, and that astounds me, because he took over the club at the bottom of the Championship, got them promoted that year, and then stabilised them in the Premier League. Now, even to stay in the Premier League afterwards is, and he was very, very good at getting the best out of his players, as in terms of the mentality that it would give his players. If you looked in that season in the Premier League, and I'm sure it might have been the same in the Championship, but that Premier League season, the season that I had with him, the amount of goals that we would score in the last minute, which would get us a draw, a win, that was something that he demanded of every single player. Now, I'm not saying there is players out there that might just go for 75, 80 minutes, or a manager that might just say you only got to play for 75, 80 minutes, but that was the minimum. That was the minimum. This is what you do for the next 90 minutes. It's as simple as that. So, I learned a lot from him in that respect. And I was 30 then, but I was still learning. I was 29. Tony Pulis, he taught me so much about the defensive side of things, and he got the best out of me. There's no question about it. I think myself and Stoke were a good fit at the time, and the rise of that football club and being part of it was something special. And Gordon Strachan, he was a character. He was a great character, and I learned a lot from him, and probably at quite an early age as well.
And when you talk about Roy Keane there and his insistence to carry on literally to the final whistle, and obviously it's reminiscent of Sir Alex and his attitude. Now, we all know that Roy and Sir Alex have had the differences since Roy left the club for whatever reason, but do you believe that, Roy played the best part of his career here at United, and therefore played under Sir Alex and one of the greatest managers. Do you think he inherited that quality from Sir Alex in many ways? There must have been some.
I think there was some. I think there was some, but what I would say is that I don't think you can teach somebody that. Do you know what I mean? I don't think you can instill that in somebody. I think you either have it or you don't. I think if you are a player that thinks he can just give 75%, I think it's going to be very difficult for a manager to make that player give 100%.
Yeah.
If you're a player that switches off in a game and things like that, you may be able to get the odd few that you can change. But for me, I think, you know, it's all these, the winning mentality, desire, commitment, all them things. I don't think you can teach people that. Right. I think it's something that you're born with. Yeah. I think it's something that your upbringing with your family probably instills in you. But I don't think that a manager can make a player be that. So although I would say that Roy Keane probably took some things off Sir Alex Ferguson as a manager, yeah. I would say that Roy Keane is the way that he is, the winner, the you know, the desire that he had, the commitment, the passion. I think that's instilled in somebody from childhood. Yeah. I don't think I could go and manage a football club tomorrow, take a lad who doesn't have any of that and give it to him. Yeah. I think that has to come from within. So whereas, yes, I'm sure he learned a lot of traits of Sir Alex Ferguson, I think that mentality that he had comes from within. It comes from when you're young, comes from your family background and things like that, you know, how you are and things like that. And it is, I look at my upbringing and I like to think that, you know, the least I will ever do when I go out on a football pitch is give everything that I have. Yeah. And that has come from my background, from my parents. Yeah. You know, especially from my dad. He would accept nothing less, no matter what I was doing. Yeah. Anything. You don't give 100%, you're wasting yourself away. And that was something that I got from an early age. So I think it's something that's instilled in you from an early age.
And do you believe that inherent kind of work ethic and desire is possibly why in sort of recent years that Sir Alex and Roy maybe haven't quite seen eye to eye, just because of that personality clash?
Yeah, I'm sure there is personality clashes, you know, but it was obviously a real shame because two greats of this football club. Yeah. You know, so obviously it was probably, as a supporter, you know, it's not great to see, but yeah. You know, they're two men that have gone on, they're doing their own thing now, and you know, and that's just how it is, really. So yeah. It is what it is, and there will be falling outs. There's falling outs with people all the time and stuff like that. But it's not something that I've ever looked at and gone, "Oh, wish that didn't." It doesn't affect me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But for me, the way I look at the pair of them is, you know, one of the best managers that this football club has ever had, and one of the best midfielders that this football club has ever had and ever will have.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And one last football-related question before we move on, just talk a little bit about the book. You played at Stoke with one of the greatest long ball specialists, or should I say throw-in specialists, Rory Delap. Yeah. But obviously United had their own equivalent, maybe not as highly regarded in that particular department. Gary Neville was there. And obviously bearing in mind we're in Gary's hotel here, how much better was Rory at the long throw? Was it just something that he was gifted with?
Oh, it was unbelievable. But the thing is with Rory is that, because I played with him at Derby, then I played with him at Southampton, and I played with him at Stoke.
Course, all three, yeah.
And we really close, really close. You know, he's as players, he was as close to me as you possibly could be without being family. You know, we still speak now. Never used it at Derby. Never used it at Southampton. Yeah. But that's Tony Pulis all over. All of a sudden he's like, because what he used to do, he was like, right, okay, do us a favour, you know, just someone going for a long ball in. So what you do, it would be, what would it be? It would be a case of, we knew he had a long throw, so he used it a couple of times at Southampton, but wasn't really taking too much notice of.
So it was something he always had in his locker,
always had it.
Never tapped into.
Always had it, never really tapped into it. And then Tony Pulis, I think he just stumbled across it. It was like, okay, well, Roy, just do us a favour. We'll just do a long throw for us. And all of a sudden, it was just like a jaw-dropping moment, and that was it. And it was, the differences between a long throw and Rory's long throw is that you still see a lot of long throws now, but the majority of long throws, they go like that. Yeah. Rory's was just a missile. Yeah. It was, and that's what used to bamboozle defenders and goalkeepers, because it would stay at that height. Yeah. It's not, you know, if it's looped up like that, a keeper can come and claim it because he can jump above everybody. But the amount of own goals that came from it, the amount of keepers punching it or punching one of their own players, and it was brilliant because I remember one game we played Hull at home. Their goalkeeper got, I think it was Myhill who was in net. He was obviously been given strict instructions. He'd been shut down by one of our centre forwards. Yeah. Put it out for a corner. It was just like, that's unbelievable. And then, you know, it was a Creso wave at the time at the Britannia, and probably the best atmosphere I've ever played in front of them first 2 years in the Premier League. Yeah. And every time Rory got the ball, there was it was like we got a penalty.
Yeah.
It was just silence, and then Rory he'd step back a few yards, and it just as he was throwing it, all the fans, thousands of fans, all you'd hear was whoosh, and then it'd just go in, and it would just be a crowd scene.
Yeah.
And then I would say that our first season in the Premier League, I'd probably go ahead and say that 75% of our goals come from throw-ins,
Yeah.
and the rest were set plays near enough.
Yeah.
But it was unbelievable, and it was such a powerful weapon, and people, it was great because you'd speak to the lads afterwards from the other teams,
Yeah.
and just say, you know what, we've worked Monday to Friday on your throw-ins,
Yeah.
and we still scored against them from a throw-in. So different people did different things. Certain teams would say, right, okay, what we want to do, we want to leave our keeper with as much room as possible.
Yeah.
So we're not going to surround the keeper. Other players would go, right, what we're going to do, we're going to create a barrier so the keeper could come through and punch it or get it.
Yeah.
But the one thing that teams found very difficult is that you couldn't be offside from a throw-in.
True, yes.
So we
Yeah.
could create the crowd scene, and there's nothing that they could do about it. It's not as though the keeper could say, right, do us a favour, lads, push up 5 or 10 yards,
Yeah.
leave them in. Because the minute they do that, we are onside. And I remember one time we played against Tottenham, and Gomez, who's now in net for Watford, first of all, I think he got punched by one of his own players by accident who was going up for it, or headbutted by him. And then another long throw came in, and he had to be substituted. He was physically emotional. It just got the better of some plays, the whole intensity of the ground and everything. And there was a lot of times that we played there that the opposition were beaten before they actually stepped out on the pitch because they were just blown away with the intensity of us, how we played, and not just that, but the atmosphere was very hostile.
Yeah, and funny enough, I was chatting with Danny Pugh last week, and he also mentioned that story, like you said there, of opposing teams just actually kicking the ball out for corners, as opposed to, I've also got this image of Premiership teams using some sort of throwing machine, you know, during the week.
Oh yeah,
I imagine they will have
tried
brought
everything.
in some contraption to kind of mirror it, but you
definitely.
can never really. Yeah, and then just moving on briefly just to your international career as well, it's been well documented that you played for Gibraltar very late on in your career. The question I wanted to ask you was, have you noticed any impact since you played there? Has it had any impact on Gibraltar football in general because it's raised the profile?
Yeah, well, I think what's happened now is because they've been accepted by UEFA.
Yeah.
So they have one league there and they all use one pitch, although there is plans to build an international stadium. Yeah. So they get the Europa League places and the Champions League places. So there's probably more money to play for, so there has been an influx of Spanish players going over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it definitely did because, you know, MUTV did a show on it. Sky did bits on it as well, which was great coverage, the newspapers and everything as well. So I think that's opened up a lot of people, and I think the simple fact that they're in the same group as Scotland, in the same group as Republic of Ireland, I think has made it's actually made a lot of people be their second country, if that makes sense, to support, because there has been some, you know, they've had some maulings, you know, they've had some good beatings, but they've also given a good account of themselves in some games. But it'd be interesting to see how it does grow now, because there's a few English players playing over there in terms of playing here, but then going over there. Yeah. But you know, I think that there is, if people look at other people's backgrounds and things like that, I think there is quite a lot of people that would be eligible to play for Gibraltar. So that has to be the way forward, because I think to just base it all on people that live in Gibraltar would be very difficult, and that's not being disrespectful to the standard of football, but I think there's maybe 28,000-30,000 people that live there. Yeah. So they want to keep it rising, and I think that they have to look a little bit further afield in terms of who can qualify to play for Gibraltar. I think very important is to get the stadium done, because at the moment they're having to play in Portugal. So if they can get this stadium done, which there is talk of getting done hopefully in the near future, then that will also be, you know, better as well for them.
And are you almost like a sort of minor celebrity there now? When you've been over to Gibraltar, are you instantly recognisable to everyone in the street?
Yeah, I think so. I think the interesting thing was that when I first had the call to go and play for them, it was against Slovakia. So it was their first game actually after being recognised by UEFA. A lot of questions were asked, you know, why are you just doing it now? Is it just so you can say you played international at the end of your career? Now, before then, they'd never been recognised by UEFA. They'd been in touch with me on a couple of occasions, but just for a chat really more than anything, because it would have been absolutely pointless. Yeah. Because of the simple fact that they'd have to fly me over, they'd have to accommodation. They didn't have the money to be able to do things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't as though I went and played for them and said, right, okay, I want X amount of money. It was nothing like that. I didn't. I got the same as everybody else.
So were you funding your own? Were you subsidising
your
own
trips?
No, but
that's what would have happened.
Right.
If they'd have asked me to play for them before they were recognised by UEFA. Obviously,
Right.
you get recognised by UEFA, you get some money.
Yeah.
And that's when they thought, right, okay, now we can do it. So I went out there, people questioned it, oh, he just wants to do this. And the biggest thing for me was that I didn't say anything about it. The only thing that I said when people asked me, I said, listen, say whatever you want to say, but then base it on me playing for you.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily, you can base it on my performance if you want, but base it on what I give out on the pitch.
Yeah.
And afterwards, everything changed. It was like, okay, yeah, we see that you're not here just to get this one cap and things like that, and you're not here just for an easy ride. And so that was nice. And then it got to, I was then playing actually part-time because my media had started to take off, and I was losing interest in playing football.
Yeah.
That gave me a great buzz to go and play for Gibraltar against Slovakia.
Yeah.
And then round about December time, I was just getting to the point where I just had enough of playing, and I retired, which was my choice, and I haven't regretted a single day. I've not missed football playing in any way, but I did say to Gibraltar that I would play the next 2 games, which was, I think we played the Faroe Islands and Estonia. Then after that, everyone was saying, listen, we still want you to play for us.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, I can't justify that. I said, because for me, that means I've got to be playing on Saturday,
Yeah.
You know, part-time, because things are going well with the media side of things, and first and foremost, that's not fair on my family.
Yeah.
So because I don't enjoy playing football anymore. B, how can I possibly go and play for a semi-professional team, knowing that the only reason I'm doing this is so I can play for you?
Yeah.
So I always feel that, you know, from an early age, I was always told, be true to yourself. And that's what I've been. And then, like, people have rang me and said, you know, did you not miss the fact that you could have played against the Republic of Ireland, against Germany? And I don't.
No.
I don't miss any of it. You know, the football was very good to me.
Yeah.
But I knew that the time was right. You know, and Jamie Carragher once said it a while ago, and it's so true: leave football before it leaves you. And the time had come. I'd got to the point, and I think there's a lot of lads that finish playing football, and when they finish, I think that a lot of them can feel sorry for themselves because their careers come to an end. I was a complete opposite. I was like, God, I've been so lucky to play professional football for the best part of 20 years.
Yeah.
Move on now, it's time to go and do something else. So that was my outlook on it, and you know, it was great. Football was very, very good to me.
Yeah.
But I don't miss playing.
And just moving on briefly to your media work.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know you do quite a bit here at MUTV, but you've also worked for other, what you could call them, independent from United outlets. I know you write an article in the Independent. You've got a weekly show now, I believe, on TalkSport. Is it harder to remain objective when you're not? Oh, let me phrase this correctly. Is it harder to remain objective when you're working for MUTV as opposed to obviously the outlets that are independent from the club?
No, because I honestly do believe there's ways and means of doing it. Yeah. When I was a player, didn't really appreciate if you were listening to someone on a radio station or watching someone on television and they would individually pick someone apart. I don't think that's right. Yeah. It is each to their own. But I think as constructive criticism goes, I don't think there's anything wrong with constructive criticism. Yeah. I think that's fair. It's not singling out people. It's not having a dig at an individual. But constructive, I think, is fine. And at MUTV, it's fine. I've been able to do that, you know, and that's been fine. And in all like other companies where I work as well is fine as well, because myself personally, I would never individually, and like I said, this is my way, I would never individually have a dig at somebody, because I don't see the point. What are you telling someone at home that's listening to that? You know? It's got to be constructive. So okay, if someone's not having a good game, why they're not having a good game? What can they do? What can make them better? Yeah. And that's something that's very, very important for me, and that's the way I like to think that I've gone about this. You know, I love the tactical side of things, and you know, people have appreciated that. And I think what I try to do in every show that I do, or whatever it might be, every commentary that I do, you try and give people at home something that either they didn't know before or that they hadn't recognised.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because if you just do a show or you do commentary and you're telling people something that they already know,
yeah,
or you're not breaking it down in the right way, then I think
you're not necessarily adding value.
You're not necessarily adding value, and at the end of the day, whichever way you look at it, it's still entertainment.
Yeah.
So, for me, the way I like to think you can entertain somebody at home is by telling them something they don't know, pointing out something that you may think is obvious, but it will explain a lot why this is happening in the game, why is that happening, why is this player reacting that way. Yeah. And I think that's really important. Like I say, you've got to add value, you've got to add something to what you are doing. Obviously, in my opinion, there's no point doing it. And the thing is, for me, is that this is what I want to be in my next career. I'm not doing this just for, just get me out of the house and do it for a few quid or anything like that. I'm doing it because it's something that I believe in and I love doing, and I found something that, don't get me wrong, my passion was at its ultimate highest when I was at the top of my career. Yeah. But what I'm doing now gives me more satisfaction than probably the last 2 or 3 years of my football career did.
Yeah. Yeah. And presumably then, because of your kind of, use the word philosophy with Louis van Gaal, it's his favourite word, but because of your philosophy of not necessarily just pinpointing and criticising players, but rather providing constructive criticism, presumably then you've never had a player that you've discussed that subsequently contacted you and maybe been annoyed with you, because obviously they probably appreciate the facts of your approach to it and how you're trying to do that.
Because when I do this, I say everybody's different as an individual. But when I did this, I always think to myself, right, okay, if I'm going to say something, put myself in the player's shoe, or the team's shoe. How would I feel? Yeah. And that's why I think it's constructive. If I was sat at home and I was watching something on the television and someone said, well, you know what, he's done this, but he should have done this and that would have been better, I'd probably be sat at home and think, hey, you know what, I either agree with him or I don't agree with him, but I understand where he's coming from. Yeah. So no, I've not, and that's my aim. I'm not going to be. I don't want to be one of these people that just says something for effect. Because how long are you going to keep doing that? Yeah. For me, it's a case of constructive. Like I say, constructive criticism. As a player, I would get constructive criticism all the time. You know what? I appreciated. I respected it. Yeah. And I just feel that that's the way you should go about things, because otherwise, yes, you know what, you might cause a few headlines for a while and things like that, but there's no longevity in that at all, because nobody wants to hear someone just hammering somebody all the time. I don't think. Do you know what I mean? And honestly, I don't think there's many people out there that do that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think if there is, then you've only got a small window that you're going to be able to be doing it for.
Absolutely, and obviously from our chat today, it's quite apparent that you're a very candid bloke, and obviously from the snippets I read of the book as well, you're a candid man, and you do work for independent outlets as well, whereby, have you ever said anything that's landed you in maybe hot water with the club because you've criticised an element of the play or the tactics with United? Because obviously you've got this dual role of working for both the club and the independent outlets as well.
No, I haven't, because
I suppose it goes back to what you were saying, because you provide that rationale of why you're making
I like to think that if I ever say something that not negative but might be constructive about Manchester United, that if someone's going to read it or someone's going to see it, that it's going to be see where he's coming from. Yeah, I'm never going to say nothing. One thing I will never ever do is say something that I don't believe that is true. That's what I'm saying. So if I believe it's true, then I feel as though you have to. Don't get me wrong. When you work for the football club, I think yes, obviously you're concentrating on the football club. But for me, what my issue is that I have, or that I would have, is that if I'm working for one of these other companies, or I'm writing for another company, and all of a sudden I get the remark that, oh, you would say that because you do bits at MUTV. Yeah. That's not what I want. No. I would rather somebody turn around to me and go, you know what, he works at MUTV, but he's not afraid to have his opinion on Manchester United. That's where I'm coming from, because I don't want to be seen like that. I support Manchester United. They're the club I've always supported, always will support them, but I'm not going to treat them like I wouldn't treat any other clubs in terms when it comes to looking at things, whether it's how a team's playing or anything like that. No.
And when you were first taken on board at MUTV, was that something you expressed to them that that will be a policy that you'd undertake, where you would want to be completely honest in your opinions about the club?
I think they know that anyway, because the thing is with MUTV, I'm not contracted with MUTV or anything like that, so I do quite a bit for MUTV, but MUTV isn't. I probably do. There's probably 2 or 3 other companies that I do more for than I do for MUTV.
Yeah.
But you know, like for the MUTV, a lot of times I'll do like the debrief. I'll do some of the match day live, and I'll do the under 21s.
Yeah.
You know, and that's great. It's great that they want me to do that, and it's very enjoyable. And what I try to do with them 3 things is bring the tactical side of it to it, because I think when you go into any line of work, you've got to create a niche for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I like to think is one of my stronger points, which is the tactical side of things, and breaking it down to make it easier for everybody to understand. There's no point me saying, okay, well, look at him, he's playing in between the lines, and number 10's doing that, but because people are like, what?
Yeah, you've got to break it down.
You've got to try and
the science of it.
And it's like me, like if I was to watch American football or a sport that I don't know too much about, and someone's talking like that, I'd be like, what? Yeah. You want someone to break it down to you. And make it as simple as possible, because don't get me wrong, a lot of the time when you're doing a show, you're doing a commentary, you're doing radio, or you're writing a column, a large percentage of them people will know all about football, but there's still going to be a percentage that possibly don't know that much about football. And if you're talking about like what I've just suggested, then you're probably going to go over their head, and they're probably just going to switch over, or probably just going to turn the page. But I think if you can simplify things, because football's a simple game, and simplify things as much as you can, I just think that works out better.
Absolutely, yeah. And just now, I mean, obviously a lot of the stories that you'll have recounted today, I imagine that you've alluded to certainly during this interview, will be elaborated upon in the book as well. The Rise of the Underdog as well, Danny's autobiography, which we're going to give a copy away today, signed copy. I wanted to ask as well, obviously, like I mentioned before, you're a candid bloke. If you were to recommend to people, you know, if you were to say, someone was to say, just give us a quick elevator pitch as to why they should read your football book, what would you say to them?
The one thing I did, because I got approached to do the book originally by Wayne Barton, and he does a lot of stuff with Manchester United. He's a great lad, and I didn't entertain it. Yeah. And then we spoke again, and I said I'll do it on one condition, and he was like, what? He said, well, I'm not having any sensationalism in there. It's not that, and the person that's criticised most in that book is me, right? And that's how I feel it should be. I've read a lot of autobiographies, some very good ones, some ones that are okay, and the ones that I love that are very, very good is that they're their own biggest critic, because an autobiography should be about where are your shortcomings, why did this go wrong, why did that go wrong, and I think a lot of the times you can read books and it's pointing the finger. And I don't appreciate reading that in a book. I like to be able to read a book and go, okay, yeah, well, he said he made this mistake, or he said he could have done better here, or this has happened, well, why is that? And then going into an explanation why you should have done better. Yeah. And that was the one thing I said, that this book was going to be completely and utterly honest about me taking responsibility for everything that went well and everything that went wrong. Yeah. And that's what I just think that it is. I don't think I think it's a book that everybody will be able to associate with, because of the simple fact it's about football, but it's about life as well, about ups and downs and things like that, where I think a lot of times you can read books and not feel connected to them because it might feel on a different level, whereas I think with the one that, with my book, is that I like to feel that people can read it, and when they read it, although there may be different stories than that,
right, Danny.
It's all right. And although there may be different stories than what they may have, they can relate to them. And that was the biggest thing for me, to be honest, completely 100% honest about myself, and admit to my shortcomings, and know where I could have done better and where I succeeded. Yeah.
Like you said, you're a candid bloke, the book's very honest. Is there anyone that you've discussed in the book? I know you tell a few stories, that the Roy Keane one sort of stands out as well. First of all, I wanted to ask, two-part question. What's the story that most people, whether it be on Twitter or if you see people in and around football, want to discuss with you, that they've read in the book and they've been like, oh, that was interesting. Tell us a little bit more about that. And secondly, has there been anyone who's taken umbrage with something that you've written about them in the book?
No. I don't. There's not there's nothing really to take from there, as in terms of, there's only one person that I'd probably say that like I had a bit of a dig at, and it was a challenge. Steve Malbrandt put a challenge on me, and you know, and I put in there, it wasn't a good challenge. It wasn't. Yeah. You know, I said it was a house challenge, which it was at the time, and that's the only thing. The other things with like, the thing is, when it was serialised, which it is, people pick up, okay, well, look at this, he said this about Roy Keane, things like that. Yeah. You read the chapter about Roy Keane, I've got nothing but the greatest respect for him.
Quite clearly, as you've reiterated today as well.
But in the book as well, that's saying exactly the same thing, as in terms of, because obviously, you know, you can see on the back what it says, and it's saying, you know, Roy Keane was in the dressing room before the game, he said, well, you're not good, you might as well enjoy going out and not being good and things like that. And I've actually said, and it says on the back, that it was the best reverse psychology that you could have given. So no, there isn't. There's nothing. I think people like talking about that duck formation one. I think it makes everybody laugh. And obviously the thing with working with Roy Keane, because I thought he was brilliant. He was, the way that he went about things. When you take a step back from it, it's like, okay, yeah, I see why I did that. I remember we played Manchester City away. Yeah. Got beat 1-0. I didn't have the greatest of games. And then on the Thursday we did 11v11, and that was always, you knew near enough what the team was going to be then, and I wasn't playing. Yeah. And then on the Friday we had a five-a-side, and then tell you what, the five-a-sides on the Friday, there was no holds barred. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I ended up scoring a hat-trick in the game. Saturday morning comes along, playing in the North East Derby, and I'm in the team. Yeah. And lo and behold, I scored the first goal. Afterwards, you know, he's asked, you know, what do you think about Danny scoring? He scored a hat-trick in a five-a-side that we did yesterday. I just thought he had a goal in him. Yeah, yeah. And do you know what I mean? And just things like that. And it's not until you then take a step back later on in your career, or when you finish playing, because you're in that bubble all the time, you take a step back and you go, that's genius. Yeah, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because how many people would have done that? Yeah. You know, and it's just, for me, it was, you know, one of the things I said, you know, it was to train with him, to actually have the opportunity to play with him, to play against him, and then to be managed by him was, you know, some of the biggest things that I'm proud of in my career. And
have you spoke to Roy since the book's been
published?
I
haven't seen him. No. I haven't seen him, but the thing is that I would say, listen, I don't think there'd be any problem with him, but you know, at the end of the day, it's how I see things, and I think that, like you say, if anybody reads that book, you see, okay, well, yeah, you see where he's coming from has been, you know, nothing but complimentary, and I think that's, and that is very much, like I say, like the book is in terms of how I do my work. I just think that, you know, would I have, let's put it this way, if anybody read that book, would I have any problems? Would I think to myself, oh, I wouldn't want them to read that book? No, nobody at all, because it's honestly, and like I've said, I've not written a book. The main reason I wrote a book was to make sure that I'm not going to slow anybody. I don't need to do things like that. Yeah. You know, it is what it is, and that's the type of person. There's no point me being a certain way as a footballer, being a different way as a pundit, and then being a different way in a book. All three have to mirror each other. Yeah. Else otherwise, at some point, someone's going to go, okay, well, out of them three things, out of your football career, out of what you're doing now, or out of a book you've just written, they don't all match up. Yeah. So which one's not right? Which is a lie? And that's what I like to think, that, you know, my career, my football career, what I'm doing now, and the book all, you know, go hand in hand, so to speak. Yeah, consistency, absolutely. One last question, actually, I wanted to ask you. Do you remember your initiation when you? Oh yeah. The lads, obviously, Nardiello, he talked about someone hitting him on the head, pretending it was an egg, it was a spoon or some Giggsy, I believe it was. Do you remember your initiation at the club? Yeah, you had to get this broom. Yeah. You had to sing your favourite song. Do
you remember what it was at the time?
Red Wine.
97, was it? Then obviously when you just signed.
Mine was Red Wine, but the problem was Lee Sharp was there, Giggs and all them were there, and obviously, and I got really nervous as I'm singing, and for whatever reason, I couldn't stop my lip twitching, but it was like going crazy. So I'm singing, trying to keep a straight face, and everyone's laughing. They're not laughing at me singing, they're laughing at my lip going up and down, and the more they laughed, the more nervous I got, the more my lip would start twitching. And for about the next 4 months, I was called Elvis, and it wasn't nice. That was it, really, you know. But it was hard work. It was so nervous, nerve-wracking for everybody, definitely. But it's part and parcel of it.
Yeah, Well, I just wanted to say, Danny, an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And like you say there, you mentioned there's some life lessons in there. Well, I feel like I've learnt a couple today as well, just listening to you talk about the, you know, the work ethic and things like that. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Cheers, Danny.